way in which I ended up going into this community was through Thomas J. Eitenauer, who was the president of HLI at the time. I have previous uploads for those who aren't aware of the situation that went down with him and the things that he did to me and these other women. He was the connection to Florida and this community through Bishop Baker and some other ties. I knew nothing about it. I'd never even been to Florida. So Eitenauer was the entire reason I ever found out about this community. And for those who haven't been following, Thomas J. Eitenauer, previous president of Human Life International / ritual rapist, incarnated in West Palm Beach, Florida, along with James LaBar. My motive was getting help with the addiction. So he set the whole thing up to just an alternative treatment for addiction, is what I was told. This is what they'll tell you in the beginning, that they recommend 3 years for the full quote-unquote treatment to be effective, where you're not an addict anymore. The entire approach is non-medical, and it actually goes against the studies and the science of addiction. In fact, all you have to do is go onto the American website to read about us on this community's website to find out that they're equating addiction with a person's character, with their soul, with their intentions, with who they are, with their identity. They're not viewing it as what it is, a disease and addiction, something to be treated. That is not who the person is. On their website, and they try to say they're a school of life. They're the solution, not just for addiction now, they're also the solution for mental illness, all mental illness. Because in reality, none of these things are actually illnesses to this community. It's you. It's something to be treated. It's not an illness. It's not anything that's been discovered, but anything that has been proven to be to them. No. Our take is an addiction is something inherently wrong with you. It has to do with who you are and your ability or inability to love. It's a load of crock. You're told, okay, this is our solution and treatment for addiction. And then they expand it to everything, all problems, all ailments. They're saying this is a solution for all of it. And they're also telling people that regular drug rehabs and regular treatment don't work. So you're told they recommend 3 years, but that you can leave anytime. So I've already mentioned over and over again that this is not true, that you cannot leave anytime, that you will in fact be held against your will indefinitely. As soon as your relatives, your family members, anybody who's around you has left you there and they're not there anymore, everything changes. They'll tell them on the outside that you can go anytime you want. They'll tell you you can go anytime you want, but you can't. You're checked at the door. Any belongings that you've brought with you, personal items, even things like toothpaste or a toothbrush or a blanket or anything like that, that all now belongs to them. And they determine when or if you get any of those things back. You don't tell anyone in the house. You're not supposed to tell them your last name. You're not supposed to introduce yourself with your last name. The rule for everyone is as soon as you enter into this community, you are not allowed to speak about anything that happened the moment before you stepped into this community. Unless you have been approved by the people in control to give a public testimony. They're going to control who gives testimony and who doesn't, by the way. So they're going to control. If you're somebody who's going to give an honest testimony or can see through any of this, they're not going to let you get up and speak. Okay, so it's going to be people that they know are controlled and that they know are going to say exactly what they want them to say to the public. You are not allowed to speak about your family. You're not allowed to speak about your friends.
We don't want to hear about it.
You're not allowed to speak about your life before. You're not allowed to speak about your country, your state, where you're from, how you grew up, any of that. It's not allowed. It's not a suggestion. It is not allowed.
Hakuna Matata.
All pictures and personal items are confiscated after family members or anybody who brings the person there has left. All right? It all goes in a box, so they take your suitcase with everything in it, and they have places where they lock all of these things away so that you cannot access them. That includes your personal documents, which I've already gone into this as well, which they do end up shipping to the house in Saluzzo no matter where you're at. They don't tell you that, but they'll send your documents there and lock them in a safe in Saluzzo, the mother house. Americans are treated very differently in this community than anybody from anywhere else. The Americans are laughed at when they try to escape or they try to leave because everybody knows our country is across the ocean. Americans are laughed at because they know once they get an American over there into the community, it is going to be the absolute most difficult for us to escape. We're the ones most at risk for getting trapped there for years and years. Some of the best people I've ever met in my life, I met in that community. So when I'm talking about this community and its dangers and those in control, I'm not talking about the people that enter. I'm not talking about the majority of people in the community or those that have been brainwashed and deluded into it. That's not who I'm talking about. Some of the most incredible people I've ever met and the closest friends I've ever had, I made over there. It's also obviously a huge culture shock. So it's a major thing to adjust to. It was February 22nd of 2005, and I officially entered this community in Lourdes. So what they did with my personal belongings and everybody else that would enter, and it was around the same time as me that I watched and witnessed as well. So this was a common thing. All the pictures of like my siblings, my little siblings and me, and all those personal items were confiscated, locked up. And I was told that when they determine I'm ready or it's okay, they'll give them back to me. So I was giving them back the week that it was decided we were doing this other thing. So a lot of weird things are done in this community, but one of the things that they do is they'll like build a wooden cross and then have you basically take, if you have personal belongings you brought with you, to burn them with this cross, because that's the right thing to do to let go of your addiction and the outside world, which is not the real world, right? It's fake. They'll make up a million excuses for why you need to do this. Bottom line, and what it comes down to, and the reason they're having you do this, not just for conformity, but they want to cut you off and strip you of your identity and anything that will remind you of who you are or what your life has been, because they don't want you. They don't want you there, right? They want to turn you into a drone for this community. You can't have anything that makes you stand out in any way. You can't have anything that reminds you of what was or who exists out there before you step into this community. We're talking people that are trying to get off drugs. They're trying to get help with an addiction, and they go in desperation. Instead, you come out of the withdrawal and you're finally seeing stuff clearly, but guess what? It's too late. You're already there. You're already trapped. See, we weren't told we had to give who we were away. We weren't told we had to not be able to speak about our past or anybody from the outside, any of our life experiences, anybody that we care about, or anything that happened before. We weren't told we're not allowed to tell people our last names. We weren't told that we were going to be coerced and manipulated and pressured into burning personal items and pictures of our family members and people on the outside. You will be physically prevented from leaving. So someone did ask, an answer right now, yes, I was physically stopped. I was physically prevented from finishing my escape the first time. They will physically stop you. The American girl I was speaking of from Texas, who I've not been able to track down since I got back here, because I don't know her last name, go figure, because we're not allowed to tell people our last names there. She was trying to leave. When I was in Bartres, she was in Bartres, and she got there way after me, so she was considered a new girl. And she had been trying to escape over and over again. It was a smaller house. So I mentioned that this girl was essentially put in solitary confinement, like alienated from everybody else. Wasn't allowed to speak, wasn't allowed to eat with us, wasn't allowed to talk with us, wasn't allowed to do anything because she got in a physical fight with one of the older girls there. But here's the problem. She got in a physical fight because she was physically prevented from leaving. She wouldn't let her leave. In fact, the same individual that she got in a physical altercation with is the same individual that physically assaulted me to prevent me from escaping when I was in Bartres. So now she is being penalized because she physically fought back a girl who physically was preventing her from leaving, which is her right to leave at any time. You are committing a crime by laying hands on her. You are committing a crime by preventing her from leaving the property. If you try to do that, guess what happens? You'll be digging 6-foot holes out in the back all hours of the morning and night. You won't be allowed to talk to anybody else. We're not allowed to say anything to her. We're not allowed to say good morning, good night to her. They literally have you shunned by the whole house. And if you dare say something to somebody who's in this shunning right now, then you're going to end up getting in trouble. I never physically fought back when I was physically stopped. Like I said, I've never hit anybody in my life. I just haven't. But she had every right to do so. Every right to do so. She's trying to leave. You're physically preventing her. She has every right to take you down in any manner she sees fit to escape, because you are committing a crime against her and holding her against her will here. My youngest brother died when I was 16, right after birth, and I had pictures of him. Now, like, for those who haven't been following, I essentially raised my 5 younger siblings and my mother, all while defending them from her violence, Randy's violence, and my older brother Matthew's violence and abuse. And especially during my mom's last 2 pregnancies, I was the one that, I was always the one there for her, but it was much more extreme now. I was the one going to the hospital with her all the time because she was bleeding and she was having to take shots and do all sorts of different things, and she was bedridden, and, because she kept getting pregnant, kept having kids, even though it's basically killing her. She lost 8 children because of the Catholic doctrine, because of what they pushed there. This specific bus was different for me than the others, and I was the one there with her, basically fell asleep holding his body overnight, and then the nurses came and got him and brought him to the morgue. And I was absolutely devastated beyond what I had ever experienced before, because I vicariously, these kids, any kids that she got pregnant with were my responsibility. They were my kids to me. And so I was bonding with them in ways no kid should ever feel the pressure to or have to do in a situation like that. It's not normal. Because I knew she wasn't going to be the one protecting and taking care of them, and that's what I was made to do. That is the role that I took on, to protect my mom and any babies that she got pregnant with. So this was my last brother that she lost, John. I had some pictures of him. I had a old teddy bear that they gave him at the hospital, and some other things, along with other pictures of my siblings and letters and things like that I had brought with me. Not letters that were sent, because mind you, this community commits crimes every day by withholding mail, tampering with mail, breaking into mail, erasing parts of paragraphs and letters, never giving mail to the people in the community or sending it out from the people in the community. It's all up to what they decide. They'll change what's said in a letter from somebody. They'll withhold it from you for 3 years. That happened to me. It's happened to countless people in there. So they control communications completely. You will not get to talk on the phone with anybody. You will not get to speak or see anybody on the outside in that way. Any letters you send, they'll say, okay, give them to me and we can send them out. But they don't send them out. They won't send them out unless they're sure it's not going to harm them in any way and you're totally sucked into this and it's only positive. So they'll read whatever you write and they decide whether they're going to send it out. Read what your family and friends send and they'll decide whether they're going to give you that letter or not. They'll decide if they're going to give you half the letter. They'll decide what they're going to do with it. They control everything. Ended up breaking down and actually burning the only pictures that I had of my brother, the teddy bear, other pictures and personal items, because I was told that was God's will. That's what he wanted. All right, I would be doing the wrong thing and I would be being selfish not to burn these things that night. So they'll tell you one thing until they get you to the next step where they want you, and then they'll break to you what's really going to happen. So they'll say the 3-year thing. Yeah, 3 years is what it takes. And they won't really say much else to you until you hit a year. Once you hit a year, that's when they start talking to you about 4 years is really probably what you need. They'll wait 6 months to another year before they tell you, well, 5 or 6 actually is probably what you're going to need. So in a healthy place of treatment with actual professionals, if you go into a rehab or if you go into a psychiatric ward for treatment or anything like that, there's going to be restrictions depending on whether you voluntarily admitted yourself or been involuntarily admitted to a mental hospital. But when it comes to these places, if you go into a hospital and you can't have your phone or something like that, that's one thing. It is a temporary situation and it is something you agree to before they sign you in there. It's not something that you unless you're involuntarily admitted, which that's something that can only be done, okay, by the law and professionals, not by this community. And this community has the authorization to hold somebody against their will, not for mental reasons or any other. A medical detox to get off the heroin at the Charleston Center back in 2016. I admitted myself, I'm in the middle of detox. I can leave in the middle of the night if I want, because these are professionals. This is, actual treatment and people that don't break the law. The motive in any treatment for an addiction should be for the person to recover, for them to rehabilitate, for them to be able to get the tools necessary and the treatment necessary to be able to re-enter into the normal daily life routine in the world, be able to handle that, equip them for that, and kind of slowly. The goal should be being independent out in the world. That should be the goal. Comunitá Cenacolo, it's the opposite. It is the total opposite. Their goal is not to give you the tools that you need to be able to live a healthy life out in the real world, all right? Because that's not the real world to them. Because as soon as you're in the community, the outside, nobody knows, but it's a matrix. They literally make you watch the movie The Matrix and tells you that's what this is.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole.
This is what they tell people in the community. Outside world is a matrix. We, the community, are the real world.
Let me tell you why you're here. You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind.
Motive and goal is not to equip you to be independent and recovered in the real world. Their motive is to make you dependent upon them, to be controlled by them, to be used by them. Their goal is for you to remain within their control in that community, in their quote-unquote real world.
It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about? The Matrix.
To protect you from the Matrix outside, to protect you from yourself.
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. You can see it when you look out your window, or when you turn on your television, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes.
Because you're just an addict, which means you're unable to love, not like it's a disease or an illness or anything. It's the total opposite, and that goes along for mental illness treatment as well. Eating disorders and anything else. It just started with, oh, it's alcoholics, men on the street. Now it's men and women. Now it's any addiction. Now it's mental illness. Now it's eating disorders. Now it's whatever you want it to be. But their goal is not to rehabilitate you so that you can have an independent life out in the real world. Their goal is to make you dependent upon them, to break you down, to strip you of your identity so that you can be part of their cult.